G'day and welcome to Plan Azure Kubernetes Service. Let's get stuck into the first module, Understand Azure Kubernetes Service Architecture. Azure Kubernetes Service is a managed service that simplifies deploying, managing, and scaling containerized applications using Kubernetes. With AKS, you share the responsibility of managing your Kubernetes cluster with Microsoft. And AKS consists of two main components, the control plane, deployed and maintained by Microsoft, and node pools, which are deployed and maintained by you. The control plane includes an API server for workload management, an etcd database for storing and maintaining the Kubernetes configuration, and a scheduler that watches for new pods and assigns them to an appropriate node, and controller managers, including the Kube Controller Manager, which is responsible for managing controllers and keeping your cluster in its desired state, and the Cloud Controller Manager, which manages Azure resources such as nodes, routes, and services to provide support for running Kubernetes on Azure. Now, node pools are made up of one or more nodes, which are Azure VMs in VM scale sets that run Kubernetes components like the kubelet, which is responsible for ensuring that containers are running in their pods, the kube proxy, which is a network proxy that maintains network rules, a container runtime, which manages the lifecycle of your containers, and the containers, which are run in pods on your nodes. Containers include both your workloads and system containers that are used to manage Kubernetes and provide services to your containers like DNS and monitoring. AKS provides three pricing tiers: free, standard, and premium. With the free tier, you don't pay for the control plane, you only pay for your compute resources like your nodes, and it's suitable for dev test clusters with fewer than 10 nodes, but it can run up to 1,000 nodes, but no SLA is provided. Standard, on the other hand, supports 5,000 nodes and offers a 99.95 uptime SLA when using availability zones. It also includes all of the features of the free tier, whereas Premium includes all of the standard tier features plus long-term support for 2 years on a single Kubernetes version. And you can move between the free and standard tier anytime without downtime, but to move from the standard to the Premium tier requires an LTS version. When creating an AKS cluster, you select a resource group for your cluster, and a second resource group is automatically created, and it's referred to as the node resource group or the infrastructure resource group, depending on where you look in the Azure portal. This resource group contains VMs, networking, and other resources associated with your cluster. Now, you can choose a custom name for this resource group when you create your cluster, but if it's not specified, it'll follow the format MC underscore, the resource group name that your cluster is in, another underscore, the cluster name that you've used, another underscore, and then the location. Now, modifying any of the resources under this resource group is unsupported and will cause cluster failures. However, you can add or modify your own tags for governance or cost purposes, but you shouldn't modify any of the Azure configured tags like the AKS managed tags and the K8's Azure tags. Now, the lifecycle of the node or infrastructure resource group is tied to that of the clusters, and it'll be deleted when your AKS cluster is deleted. Let's take a quick look at this in the Azure portal. So here I am on the Kubernetes services page. If I go ahead and create a cluster, and if we scroll down a little bit here, we can set our pricing tier. It's defaulted to standard, but we can select free, standard, or premium. And to customize our resource group name for our infrastructure or node resource group, if we take a look at the advanced tab, here we can change our infrastructure resource group name before we deploy our cluster. I'll deploy a quick free dev test cluster, and we'll take a look at the properties of that cluster. Let's take a look at the cluster configuration. So under settings, we'll jump to cluster configuration, and we can see we're currently using the free pricing tier, and we could upgrade to standard if we'd like to, and if we were using an LTS version, we could also move to the premium tier. And if we take a look at the properties for this cluster, We can see we've got our infrastructure resource group, and I didn't specify a name, so it's just using that default name. And if I jump to that infrastructure resource group, we can see some of the resources that have been deployed to that resource group, including a standard load balancer and a virtual network, among others. And we can also see the default tags that have been added to that resource group, including some Azure created tags that we shouldn't modify, but we could go ahead and edit to add our own tags if we'd like to.